Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And in this one, we are going to be pumping out a 10.2 PvP tier list when it comes to melee DPS. You're going to know all the pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses, and get a better idea of what these classes are going to be capable of in 10.2, given the changes up to this point. And of course, if you want to stay up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, educational and entertaining content, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. But let's get started. Today's video, we're going to be talking about the melee DPS. I've broken my tier list down from God tier, S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, and D tier moving forward, because a lot of these classes are getting some pretty crazy things. So Subtlety Rogue seemingly keeps getting survivability buffs. It's going to have a lot of healing taken or healing received buffs. You're going to be noticeably tankier, and you are already one of the most difficult melee DPS in the game to kill. You are also getting access to talents that are enabling you to completely 100 KO people, similarly to in the current patch. So really just think of the current patch Super Saiyan. So for me, in the hands of the best player, I think that Subtlety Rogue is going to feel like a God tier class. It's going to be unbelievably powerful and potent. I think it's going to be great in solo shuffle if you're playing at the highest caliber. It's going to be awesome in the solo shuffle RBGs that are coming through. It's going to be a great pickup when it comes to ranked 3s, although in ranked 3s you might be limited in your comps. I'm thinking particularly you're probably going to play with Moonkins and mages, maybe a little bit of Shadow Priest. Really depends on what the caster meta is. In today's video, we're just covering the melee DPS. It's got some decent flexibility when it comes to team play. It's great in 2v2. It's really the best dueling spec in the game. So like this thing overall, with the changes coming through, is just getting souped up and to be really powerful in 10.2. Arms Warrior, you're going to be focusing a lot on bleeds in this build and having a huge amount of sustained damage with the new set bonuses coming through, allowing you to get auto-procced thunderclaps. And if you're running the talent to spread your rend, it's going to be a really efficient way of spreading rend onto multiple targets and providing you sudden death procs now from your rend ticks, which is going to feel really good. You're going to be doing a ton of damage in that regard. Really, the strength for Arms Warrior, though, moving into this patch is the PvP talents. Particularly, they are bringing back the Safeguard mechanic, which was when you intervened an ally, you would provide 20% damage reduction to them, and you're going to have 2 charges of intervene. This is one of the most powerful effects in this game. This is what made Warrior, God tier back in the first seasons of Shadowlands, was this mechanic, and it's even stronger than the last time that we saw this mechanic. So, with its damage being in a solid spot, and now with this change coming through, pairing it with casters like warlocks, which are looking to be really menacing here in this next patch, or really anything in the game, you're going to be super durable. There's no way, we're thinking about Soul Shuffle RBGs, you're bringing Sharpened Blade, you're bringing all this team utility. It's going to be really desirable in that regard. In 2v2, Warrior's always kind of a staple class. In 3v3, you're really flexible and versatile. In Solo Shuffle now, with these new talents to protect your casters, in a lobby where maybe you got 3 melee DPS and 1 caster, you're going to be one of the best suited melee DPS to keep that caster alive, getting trained down. So I'm thinking that Arms Warrior is probably going to feel pretty God tier here for 10.2. Enhancement Shaman's getting its talents rearranged a little bit. I think it's going to have more impact on PvE. There's a lot of focus on like Ice Strike and Frost Shock damage with the new talents coming through, which may be worth trying, but my expectation is that you're still going to be playing the Doomwinds and still playing the proc Descendants and kind of fishing for those procs moving forward into this. And I don't really see it getting too spectacular beyond that. When it comes to Solo Shuffle RBG, it might be a good like assassination class, or you just move in and try and pick off somebody really quickly with an Ascendance proc, but Enhancement has historically not been too great when it comes to Battleground. So if you're really focused on trying out this new brawl and new game mode, Enhancement might not be the best pick for that. In 2v2, you can have some fun as double DPS because you're a hybrid and you can play with a pure DPS or another hybrid and have a lot of fun in the bracket, but I don't know how great it's going to be at the highest level of 2v2. And then in 3v3, you're pretty restricted on your composition. You're kind of the, Robin to Batman. You're the sidekick to the main character melee DPS a lot of the times in 3v3. In Solo Shuffle, it's going to be a casino class, I think, still with the Doomwinds build, where if you're proccing Ascendants a lot, you're going to do a billion DPS and win the game really fast. And if you're not proccing the Ascendants, then you're going to feel really lackluster. If you're getting CC'd on it, you're going to feel pretty rough in that regard. So for me, I feel like Enhancement Shaman is probably going to come in at about an A tier. It's still going to have the strong mechanics of one-shotting with the Doomwinds builds, but you're going to feel more like a sidekick, and it's not super spectacular in the new BG mode coming through here for 10.2. For Feral Druid, you're getting a lot of focus around your Feral Frenzy. You're going to be proccing fire damage on top of your bleeds as well. Your single target damage is going up a lot in this build, I think, with a lot of focus on Ferocious Bite, which is going to be really good in 3v3. That's going to be really good in 2v2. Still defensively, you're going to feel much squishier than a lot of melee. I would say that that's probably the main thing, especially if you're a new player. In rated battlegrounds, now, you've got the advantage of stealth for solo shuffle battlegrounds, so you can sneak onto a base and try and ninja cap it with stuns and clones and things like that, which something like Enhancement Shaman can't do, which would be the main advantage. You also bring mortal wounds, so that's always going to be valuable. Unlike Enhancement Shaman, if Enhance gets a lobby where there's no mortal strike, then at least as the Feral Druid, you are going to bring that, similar to the Subtlety Rogue or the Arms Warrior. That's a really important component to consider with how powerful healing is looking, even in the current patch, let alone in 10.2 with the changes that are coming through. So for Feral Druid, really good damage output, insane AoE, but survivability is lacking a little bit. So for me, I think I'm pulling it down a little bit into A tier. I think the Mortal Wounds is bumping it up to where it would be on Enhancement Shaman. The damage is there, but survivability is going to feel a little bit lower. Now, obviously, maybe an Arms Warrior and a Feral Druid, again, you're probably the sidekick to the Hunters and to the Warriors in the game as the Feral Druid. But if he's protecting you with the Safeguard and you're pumping out a lot of AoE damage, that could be a gnarly combo of classes to consider for 10.2. But again, you're going to be decently strong on your own, but these guys are probably going to be outshining you. Frost Death Knight, they are giving you a new set bonus that is going to enable Chill Streak on a single target, which has been a pain point for Frost Death Knight. If you can't get two targets next to each other, it really doesn't feel like a strong spec, with the fact that Death and Decay makes you obliterate cleave onto multiple targets, and you want your Chill Streak to bounce onto multiple targets. It's going to help alleviate that a little bit, but I still think you're really going to need to have at least two targets grouped together to really feel the power of Frost Death Knight, which is likely to feel really strong in the Solo Shuffle rated battlegrounds. There's a test actually going on today, which I'm going to be participating in. My link to my stream in the description down below if you want to watch that live. It's going to feel really strong in battleground situations for sure. I think that grouping enemies together, AoE stunning them with the Syndergosa stun and bouncing Chill Streak to a bunch of them and cleaving obliterates and having massive burst damage is going to be really desirable when it comes to Solo Shuffle battlegrounds. 2v2, it's really lackluster. 3v3, it's going to feel like a gimmick where you're kind of gripping targets together, trying to one-shot them and running away. I don't see that changing, unfortunately. While they're addressing some pain points, I feel like that's still going to be the identity for Frost. So for me, Frost Death Knight is probably coming a little lower overall for 10.2. But if I were to pick Frost over Unholy for Solo Shuffle Battlegrounds, I probably would in that regard. But when we're talking PvP as a whole, it's probably going to feel a little bit less than previous specs mentioned here. Fury Warrior, now this guy is getting a huge buff to Odin's Fury. They just changed it though, so it's not going to be the Annihilator build where you're focusing on only Bloodthirst and stuff like that. It's likely going to be a possible mix of builds. The builds are probably still going to need to settle themselves out, but there's a lot of huge focus around Odin's Fury, and it's going to be really powerful. Like when I was looking through the set bonuses, Odin's Fury for Fury Warrior was absolutely crazy. It was like 50% increased damage and causes next 3 Bloodthirst. So now it's going to be also your Raging Blows, and Bloodthirst critical strikes are going to reduce the cooldown of Odin's Fury. It's going to feel like a really powerful single target pumper, and I think that's going to be really good in Soul Shuffle. It's going to be really good in 2v2, Monster in 2v2, likely going to be really strong in 3v3. I believe you have access to the same talents as Arms when it comes to this Safeguard mechanic, and if you don't, which I will confirm today after this 100%, but I'm pretty confident that you do, makes me think that Fury Warrior is going to feel pretty god tier. It's going to be a monster of single target is what I'm expecting, whereas Arms is going to be kind of more cleave oriented, but the defensive mechanics of this new Safeguard talent I think are going to absolutely put these specs through the roof to block off kills from all these other classes, main burst damage, and enable a huge amount of comp diversity for these specializations in particular. Now, Havoc Demon Hunter is getting a complete class rework for 10.2, but they just most recently changed and removed some pretty critical talents. First, they made Father of the Flame a cooldown. Now they completely removed it from the game. So what is going to be in substitute for that? It doesn't really look like a lot, at least right now. I have to wait for another update. And of course, I'll be updating these tier list videos as the patches move along. But it has been some time since I made one, so I wanted to keep tabs up going for this one. But with the removal of Fodder to the Flame, you're going to lose out on the extra damage from killing the demon, but also the heal. And you are already pretty squishy. And I can see, you know, Warriors crushing you in stuns, Subtlety Rogues crushing you in stuns. Windwalker just got an insane damage buff in the most recent build. Rogues are definitely going to be strong, and it might even be all 3 specs of Rogue. So for me, I think Demon Hunter is probably going to fall off. It's likely going to fall off. Now, is it as bad as Frosty K? Maybe I need to put Frosty K here and put this here. I think it's going to be rough. I think it's going to be rough as a Demon Hunter just from a survivability angle. I think that your damage output, though, is likely to be insane. Like the set bonuses to proc throw glaives and your overall DPS, and the nature of the talent tree that they've reduced a lot of 2-point spenders into 1 is opening up a lot more options on the tree. Probably means your damage output is going to be a lot higher, but I'm worried about your survivability, and with the power and potency of a lot of the other DPS that can kill you in stuns at the moment, I could see it falling off now since that most recent change to Fodder of the Flame. Outlaw Rogue, they're getting changes now. One change that I really like, which is going to be when you use a pistol shot and you get an ambush proc, instead of having to have a separate keybind for ambush, Sinister Strike is just going to transform into ambush, because you would press that button if you could instead, which is a huge quality of life change. They are buffing everything out of Killing Spree. So the main problem with Outlaws that had no burst damage, but they are just putting all their eggs in the Killing Spree basket. Killing Spree is going from Tickle Spree to Killing Spree again. They're actually putting, you know, killing back in the name. So with that said, you know, if it's actually doing significant burst damage with that, it could be strong. Mind you, it is more predictable and easier to stop than something of a Subtlety Rogue's burst when everyone's cheap shot. So it's probably not going to be as good as Subtlety, would be my main expectation. It's got decent overall damage. It's got some cleave damage. It's going to feel kind of like an Arms Warrior in a battleground situation when you're just kind of like team fighting, but you can stealth, go Ninja Cap bases, use blind and gouge and sap and Ninja Cap bases similar to any other rogue when it comes to battleground situations. So you're likely going to feel pretty strong in those scenarios. For me, I think it's probably coming in at about like an A tier at this point. I think that Subtlety is just going to outpace you in terms of overall burst damage, and I think that's generally going to be more desirable. Given the nature of World of Warcraft and my experience with it for, you know, what is it, like 15 years now from what I've seen, it's probably going to be a little bit more desirable for Subtlety, especially with all the healing taken, received buffs that Subtlety is getting in comparison. Retribution Paladin, really, it's just the same. You're just, you know, really durable, going to be doing a truck ton of damage, and your Templar's Verdicts are proccing extra Templar's Verdicts. So for me, Ret Paladin's probably coming in at about an S tier. I'm really tempted to put it on God tier, mostly because I think that it can do really well with Warrior, and Warrior is absolutely gnarly. I'm really tempted to put it onto God tier. You do as much damage as Aflox in Battlegrounds from the testing I've done so far. We'll have to see if that's the case now, moving into the testing that's happening today, but maybe I should put it on God tier. I'm going to put it on God tier. I think Ret Paladin is like one of the most busted specs in the game, and it's just getting more damage basically on the next patch. And it's a great counter into rogues, and it's great synergy with Warrior, and those are all, you know, looking really powerful. And its damage output is so high even in battleground situations, which is where I would normally, you know, maybe rank it lower in the past. But with its range damage and how much pressure it's putting out and scoreboard damage is putting out, there's no way it's not going to be good basically in all aspects of the game, whether it be 2v2, 3v3 RPG, or solo shuffle arena at this point. It's definitely going to be a strong class. Assassination Rogue, now this one got a lot of attention early on for how powerful it was, and it was mostly this new talent, which was like your bleeds just all squeeze out a bunch of damage and execute somebody immediately. But all that initial attention got a lot of initial nerfs. So I'm wondering if it's going to end up being as powerful, because it was talked about so much, where Subtlety Rogue was just seemingly kind of ignored, like, oh, it's going to get 15% more healing received, and oh, it can one-shot people with Gormaw's Bite, and nobody was really talking about Subtlety or really caring. It was all just assassination, and it got a lot of attention and nerf. So I'm a bit worried about it not coming out too powerfully. In battleground situations, even in current patch, Assassination Rogue is really good. The AoE Garou, it's getting a bunch of AoE damage with its set bonuses, and its most recent build, it's also getting some single target damage as well. When you get an isolated target within Venom, it's going to be doing a nice spicy amount of damage. Assassination is, I'm going to put it on S tier for right now, just because of how powerful it was in terms of its overall damage output, but I could see this one falling off. This one's kind of a risk one, where I could see this one falling off because it's just getting so much attention, and it's kind of a one trick where it's like focused all in that single moment with Deathmark. So I'm a bit I'm a bit hesitant for it remaining in this spot for any long period of time. Survival Hunter, this is another one that I think is probably going to feel like S tier. Fury of the Eagle set bonuses, proccing wildfire bombs, giving critical strike damage, amps to your pet for kill command damage. In Battlegrounds, it might not feel that great. Well, it's kind of a wait and see situation, but I think this one is kind of surprisingly tanky. Survival Hunters, and from what I've seen from watching other streams and other players, they're also starting to notice like Survival Hunter is actually really strong and actually quite difficult to kill, and it's super sleeper in that regard, and it's getting a lot of stuff that's making it look really powerful. It's probably the best spec in 2v2. It's going to be really strong in 3v3 paired up with like a Feral Druid, or possibly with a Ret Paladin. With the patch moving forward, Hunter Rogue could be really good in this patch with how much burst damage rogues are getting. It's definitely a sleeper spec. I'm putting it on the S tier. It could be an S or an A, somewhere in between. I'm sure somebody will, disagree with me here, but with what I've seen so far, it could end up being really good. In Battlegrounds, sneaking away with camouflage, trying to ninja cap a base with freezing trap, is going to be kind of a nice little niche for that. Team fight, I'm a bit worried about its team fight in a battleground situation compared to that something like a marksmanship hunter, because that's your direct competition with shared specs, but I think it could definitely come close. Yeah, I think S tier is an all right place for this. Unholy DK, the main thing with Unholy DK in this patch is that they are shifting damage into sustain. They're really going down on that train where it's like, we want your sustain damage to be high, so they're buffing a lot of those spells. Set bonuses are focusing around sustain damage. You're going to have a much more necromancy feel, summoning in ranged little skeleton mages that are going to shoot shadow bolts at people, which felt really cool when I tested it in the Battlegrounds. I was doing maybe close to what Warlock damage was happening in those solo shuffle Battlegrounds, but a little bit off. Obviously, death gripping people together is going to feel really awesome. It's going to be a super desirable mechanic. But I'm a bit worried about you getting cut down by warriors and with how strong they are. Now, of course, you can pair with a warrior, but are you going to be better than a Ret? I'm kind of doubting you're going to be better than a Ret. So I'm putting you on A tier. Again, it could be S. Could be S, but I feel like you're going to be really squishy, especially to this archetype of damage. And likely because these guys are the most meta specs, I could see it being rough for you. That's the main reason, but it's really well rounded, so it's likely to feel pretty strong in all environments, no matter what bracket you're playing. Windwalker Monk, this guy is just getting damage buffs. Like, you just take the current build where you have a lot of defensive cooldowns, great mobility, nice crowd control, and then they're just shoving more damage into your kit to bump you up from where you were currently in the most recent build. So for me, Windwalker is probably going to feel god tier. Kind of putting it, maybe we'll put Fury Warrior as the bottom god tier class. Warrior and Rogue are probably tied, Ret Windwalker, something like this. I'm being pretty harsh on Frost DK here, but I just don't see it being more than what it has been the whole expansion, which is kind of like a 2-target cleave gimmick, which feels really good when you get it set up, but then there's not much going on after that. Demon Hunter I'm ranking pretty harshly, again, because of the survivability loss with Fodder to the Flame, but its damage is likely to be absolutely stellar, so perhaps it is a little bit higher than where it currently is. But these are my current thoughts with the set bonuses, the changes coming through, my personal experience from testing for these specializations. Let me know what you think. Hope this got you excited in terms of checking out what classes are looking good. We're going to be putting out a ranged DPS and a healer tier list here in the near future as well, so make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. Other than that, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.